Good morning, everyone. So this is our second report in SOCSCI 4. So it is all about labor organization and wages. Under of this is types and determinants of wages, theories of wages, and some current thoughts on wages.
Wages, a form of monetary compensation for employees. Types of wages. Number one is minimum wage. It is the lowest hourly wage an employer can pay on employee for work, most widely recognized term in the realm of employees' compensation. A minimum wage is the lowest remuneration that employers can legally pay their employees, the price floor below which employees may not sell their labor. So most countries had introduced minimum wage legislation by the end of 20th century. And the second one is the living wages. So the living wages is the lowest wage at which the wage earner and his or her family can afford the most basic cost of living. So a living wage is defined as the minimum income necessary for a worker to meet their basic needs. And number three is the prevailing wages, refers to the rate of pay contractors and vendors must offer their employers when doing business with a government agency. So prevailing wages are rates for wages and fringe benefits set by the Department of Labor or the DOL that employers with government contracts or foreign workers must pay their employees. Number four is the tip wages. Base wage paid to an employee who receives a substantial portion of his or her compensation or tip. So tip wage is base wage paid to an employee in the United States who receives a substantial portion of their compensation from tips. Number five is the fair wages, a compilation of company practice that lead to sustainable wage development. So a fair wage is a wage that is considered fair by the employee. This salary received in return for individual work to perform will encourage the employee to invest more or less in their daily tasks. So the factors that influence determination of wage rate is number one, ability to pay. The ability of an industry to pay will influence wage rate to be paid. If the concern is running into losses, then it may not be able to pay higher wage rates. So the ability to pay is an economic principle that states of the amount of tax or individual pays should be dependent on the level of burden the task will create relative to the wealth of individual.
Number 2 is demand and supply. The labor market conditions are demand and supply forces to operate at the national and local levels and determine the wage rates. So demand in economics is the willingness and ability of consumers to purchase a given amount of good or service at a given price, while supply is the willingness or of sellers to offer a given quantity of a good or service for a given price. The third one is prevailing market rates. The wage rates paid in the industry or other concerns at the same place will form a base for fixing wage rates. As used in this list, the phrase prevailing market rate means that the amount that had landlord under no compulsion to lease the premises and a tenant under no compulsion to lease the premises would agree upon at arm's length as base rent for the premises for the extension term as of the commencement of the extension. The fourth one is cost of living. In many industries, wages are linked to enterprise, the cost of living which ensures a fair wages to workers. So cost of living is the cost of maintaining a certain standard of living. So changes in the cost of living over time can be operationalized in a cost of living index. Fifth one is bargaining of trade unions. The wage rates are also influenced by the bargaining power of trade unions. Stronger the trade union, higher will be the wage rates. So collective bargaining is the process of negotiations between employers and group of employees aimed at reaching agreements that regulate working conditions. So the interests of the employees are commonly presented by representatives of a trade union. Number six is productivity, the contribution of the workers in order to increase output. Wage increase is sometimes associated with increased productivity. So productivity is the efficiency of production of goods or services expressed by some measure. Number seven is government regulations. So to improve the working conditions of workers, government may pass a legislation for fixing minimum wages of workers. So regulation consists of requirements the government imposes on private firms and individuals to achieve government's purposes. These include better and cheaper services and goods, protection of existing firms from unfair competition, and cleaner water and air and safer workplaces and products. 8. Cost of training. In determining the wages of the workers in different occupations, allowances must be made for all the exercises incurred on training and time devoted for it. So according to the Association of Talent Development, organizations spend an average of $1,252 per employee on training and development initiatives. Though this figure is a useful starting point to help give an insight into potential spend on employee training, it's just an average. So, theories of wages. There are different types of theories of wages. The first one is wages fund theory, subsistence theory, the surplus value theory of wages, residual payment theory, marginal productivity theory, the bargaining theory of wages, and the behavioral theory of wages.
Wages fund theory. This fund he called wages fund created as result of savings. Theory was based on the basic assumption that workers are paid wages out of a predetermined fund of wealth. So this theory was developed by Adam Smith on 1723 and 1790. So the wage fund theory held that wages depended on the relative amounts of workers and the size of the labor force. So second is the subsistence theory. According to this theory, the laborers are paid to enable them to subsist and perpetuate the race without increase of diminution. This theory was propounded by David Ricardo. So, subsistence theory emphasized the supply aspects of the labor market while neglecting the demand aspects. So the third one is the surplus value theory of wages. This theory is based on the basic assumption that like other article, labor is also an article which could be purchased on payment of its price and wages. This theory was developed by Karl Marx. So that is according to the theory developed by Karl Marx, the worker is paid less than he actually produces. Um, Number four is residual claimant theory. According to Walker, there are four factors of production or business activity: land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. He views that once all other three factors are rewarded, what remains left is paid as wages to workers. So this theory owes its development to Francis E. Walker. So the residual claimant theory holds that after all other factors of production have received compensation for their contribution to the process, the amount of capital left over will go to the remaining factor. So the fifth one is marginal productivity theory. According to this theory, wages is determined based on the production contributed by the last worker. Example, marginal worker. Her production is called marginal production. This theory was propounded by Phillips Henry Wicksteed and John Bates Clark of USA. So the marginal revenue productivity theory of wages is a model of wage levels in which they set to match to the marginal revenue product of labor. So the number six, the bargaining theory of wages. According to this theory, the fixation of wages depends on the bargaining power of workers, trade unions, and of employers. John Davidson was the propounder of this theory. So, um, some current thoughts on wages. A person whose work with substantially equal qualification, skill, effort, and responsibility under similar conditions should be paid similar salaries. So, gender pay gap. The gender wage gap refers to the difference in earnings between women and men. So equal skill, it includes such factors as experience, training, education, and ability. Equal effort refers to the measurement of the physical and mental exertion needed for the performance of a job. Equal responsibility, it deals with the extent to which an employer depends on the employee to perform the job as expected with emphasis on the importance of the job obligation. So, Equal Pay Act on June 10, 1963 by the 88th Congress, introduced in the 90th Congress of United States in 1945. This act covers both private and public employees in United States, subject to the provisions of the Fair Labor Standards Act. Similar working conditions holds the assumption that employees performing jobs in an establishment that require equal skill, effort, and responsibility under similar working conditions. The fact that jobs are in different departments of a company do not in any way establish the similarities of working conditions. It must be noted that an employer may not reduce the wage of an employee. It's illegal for a labor organization or as agents or representatives to cause or attempt to cause an employer to pay lower wages to an employee on account of sex. So fair days work. Fair days pay for fair days work. Fair days work is that length of working day and that intensity of actual work which depends on day's full working power of the workman without encroaching upon his capacity for the same amount of work for the next and following days. Standard of living theory of wages. So living wage is used to define a fair and decent level of income that would enable workers to meet their basic needs. Next is standard of living, an ideal toward which individuals strive. Plain living, it describes the actual conditions. So that's all about our report. Thank you and God bless.